few people. Great. Well, you know, I titled these, oh, there's a problem with the network. There we are. So I titled this, this series of 4 weeks, Walking with the Buddha, the Eightfold Path, and Unified Mindfulness. And what I want to do is highlight the Buddhist Eightfold Path, which the Buddha taught. But more, I think, I want to emphasize and teach these 4 weeks the mindfulness skills that help us walk that path. Because we could spend all 4 weeks on just one step of the Eightfold Path. They're so deep in meaning and implications for our lives. But I'm going to just highlight the Eightfold Path, and then each week we'll be looking at a different mindfulness skill that you can use and learn, and that's what we're going to practice, so that as you live out the Eightfold Path in whatever way you do, that you have skills to do it. Because, you know, a lot of times with, whether it be Buddhism or any other philosophy or way of life, there's an emphasis on understanding intellectually, and we often hear descriptions of the teachings. But to drill down, it can be as simple as somebody mentioned coffee, and maybe, you know, the barista didn't prepare your coffee the way you really wanted it. So there is suffering in life. And what the Buddha taught you, the changes that happen naturally in life. So the good news of that third noble truth is there is a way out. There is a way to like it, and that's all. And I didn't like it because I thought what was being true, something being. Okay, that, and that is suffering in our lives.
Right view, livelihood, and right speech, necessarily about.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. Sometimes right thought is how right livelihood if we can skillful or wrong. Okay, and that's not really what it's saying. It's really what it's saying. It's really saying that. And so we're going to focus on these two. Promised us if we follow it from the good about test it out in practice. Test it out in practice in that sense. We could talk all night about both of those, okay? Of that, you know, I know in my own experience, in my own life, that some of the suffering that I've caused myself or other people have been the door to understanding. I woke up because I suffered. So, so there is an element that whether you call it necessary or important suffering, that can happen. Yeah. So the heart of this idea of suffering, why do we suffer? In your experience, why do you suffer? Yeah.
Because we want things to be different than they are.
Ah, yes. Yeah, Joseph Goldstein's definition, you know, that wanting things to be different than they are. Yeah. Why else? Yes.
Being resistant to change.
Yep. And yet, you know, when you think about it, the only thing that's constant is change, right? There is nothing that ever stays the same. So, you know, Joseph Goldstein uses this example, which I love, which is like suffering is like when a rope is moving and you grab onto it and you try to hold onto it and it goes through your hand and burns your hand. Mm. You know, we're doing that constantly. The world is changing. All of nature is changing. Inside, we're changing psychologically and physically. And yet, for some reason, we try, well, I know why. We try to freeze frame, that's what I call it, freeze frame reality so we can hang on. And the more we try to stop change, either push it away or hang on to what we have, the more it slips through our hands. And as we grab, we burn our hands, we suffer. The other example that's used, that I like a lot, in Sri Lanka, to capture the monkeys, and you may know this, they take a coconut, tie it to a tree, cut out a hole just big enough for the monkey to reach its hand in where there's sweet food, but not big enough that if they have the food, the monkey can't pull its hand out. And there's almost no monkeys that are wise enough to just let the food go, because here comes the hunter. They just hang on. And it's such a great metaphor for what we do in our lives, that despite that we know things are changing and we have to adapt by letting go or letting be, we hang on. Yes, we're conditioned, or use in English. I have to take my own. And so push it here and let everything go to hell in a handbasket? No, obviously not. Obviously not. But what I would suggest is that if we have equanimity in the world, he had basically. In my experience, but I think also practice. And one teacher was that life, I think it was Seneca, what is a skillful person? The server stops, then take the food. But if the server you don't like, you don't have to make an issue of it. Control, let it go. Did that answer what you guys agree? Practice. I'm checking.
I guess perception.
Instead of right, which is awareness, you manage your.
Yeah. Well, answer your question. He described in our life. We talk all night long about this idea that there's no permanent self. The Buddha did not teach there's no self. That's often said, but that's not what was taught. There obviously is a self. You know, I was thinking. Most of us know what a check is. You know, you sign your name on a check. Younger people don't know what checks are. I barely have any left. But I used to use that as an example. I need to know who Bob McClure is. I need to have a self to write my name on the check or know which house to go to. My house, not your house. So there is a self, and it's very useful. But it's not permanent. It comes and it goes. And we don't notice that. You know, one example that's used is somebody will say, I'm an angry person, or you're an angry person. Well, ask yourself, are you always angry 100% of the time? No, nobody is. Nobody is. Maybe some people are 90%, but that 10% means that the self comes and goes. And you know, the beautiful thing that I love, because so much of neuroscience and cognitive science is now suggesting, because we don't have enough research, but is suggesting that these ancient truths are absolutely solid in terms of the science and the research. So this idea of self, they can't pinpoint what part of the brain is a self, but there's enough neural activity to suggest that the idea of self that you and I operate on comes and goes. So the right view is the Buddha taught us to just realize that if we try to hang on and with a rigid sense of self, that we're going to suffer. And if we can flow with it and be open, and we know that that's psychologically healthy anyway, as well. Does that make sense about view? So I like this idea. The view is with the Eightfold Path. It's where we're going. Keep my eye on it. And then each of the elements of the Eightfold Path makes sense. Okay? What other comments, questions, objections? Okay, I won't torture you. You know, in mindfulness teacher school, I was trained to wait 2 minutes when I ask a question, because somebody will probably get uncomfortable enough and say, but it tortures people, so I won't. And you all can just interrupt if you want. Okay. Yes?
It's interesting to hear you explain it that way, because when you read it like out of a book, the concept is there is no permanent self, and that the permanent self leads to further attachment.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the example of, like, if you plant a seed and that seed grows into a tree. It's not, the tree isn't the seed anymore, but there's like an essence of that there. So it's just sort of understanding that you do have to have some sense of what you are. I mean, even just being here tonight, you're trying to understand this. There's got to be some foundational sense of awareness, and sense of self. And I think that the more I try to, obviously practice this, but learn about it, is that there's a theoretical piece to this, which does have value, but it doesn't mean that that's always going to lead to understanding how this works on a daily basis, which I think is, I just think that's an easy concept to miss. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Well, and my teacher, Shinzen Yang, the way he describes it is that it's obvious we need our self. You have a name, you have an identity, you have to know what car to go, start, not somebody else's. So the use of a self is very helpful, it's obvious. But when we're liberated, when we're free, we can move in and out of that sense of self skillfully. And we know psychologically that that's healthy too. If there's too rigid a sense of self and we hang on, then we become a personality disorder, basically. So that ability to move in and out, to know when to let go. Music, for example, I think many of us will experience when we're listening to music and we get caught up in it, we lose our sense of self. I love EDM, electronic dance music, and my partner's a big music guy, and we go to EDM concerts. I'm always the oldest person in the crowd, and as long as I can keep doing it, I do it. But one of the things I love is that if you've ever been to an EDM concert, the music, just the sensation, the lights, the crowd, it's the most joyous thing you can imagine. And you lose your sense of self. You become a part of this whole experience. And it's so freeing. And watch the face, look on YouTube for some EDM concert. Look at the faces of the people with their arms jumping around. There's this joyous sense. And the way I interpret it is that those people are going to go get in the right car and go home. They're using their sense of self, but they're also being able to let go. So music is a way to do that, and our practice can give us the skills to do it as well. Okay, any other comments or questions before we do what I've been saying is the heart of tonight, which is the practice itself. Okay? So what these 4 weeks are about that was my little overview, and I'll reference it, of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And this week we'll look at right view and right intention or thought. But more, and then next week we'll do some others. But the heart of what I want to do in this series is to give you some techniques that you may or may not know, mindfulness tools, to make this path richer and make it work. Okay? So if you've been here before when I've taught, I teach what's called Unified Mindfulness. And it's I've been meditating 56 years, I think, in different forms of meditation. And up until about 10 years ago, I practiced what most of us are taught to do, an insight practice, that the breath was my focus. And I really got dedicated, particularly as I began to teach it. I had to practice what I preach. I got really good at 30 minutes a day. I would go to my little cushion when I didn't have bad knees, and I could sit for 30 minutes, and I focused on my breath, and I got really good at concentration. But the problem was that it didn't move off the cushion. I mean, my life did change some, but I think the concentration skill didn't transfer into a mindfulness that embraced everything in my life. So when I came across some of these tools called Unified Mindfulness, which is a sensory-based system, and again, this is not about one practice is better than the other, okay? This is not what it's about. You have to pick what works for you. But what I'd like to do is introduce you to these tools that actually fit perfectly well with everything that's done here. So if your preferred form of meditation is to focus on the breath, that works great. But I'm also going to teach you a skill tonight to broaden your vision and your skills to take in more life. So what happened for me about 10 years ago is I began to practice these other ways of meditating. I began to wake up in daily life. I realized I began to meditate when I was at the gas station, or when I was in the supermarket, or when I was talking to somebody, that I was bringing it into my daily life. And the reason is that what I'm going to teach tonight is the basic technique that we're going to use in this series. It's called See, Hear, Feel. See, hear, feel. So it involves what you see out in the world, objects in this room, what you see in your mind when you think, because thoughts are visual and auditory. I mean, I didn't know that until I came across this. And now I know cognitive science teaches us that. And I'm going to give you an experience of it before we end. So, seeing out in the world, seeing in images when we think, hearing out in the world, sounds, hearing in auditory thinking. We are talking to ourselves all day long, right? Matter of fact, my teacher, Juliana Ray, says she goes on a retreat and she gets so sick of hearing herself, because she's really given herself observation, that she does another practice to kind of shut down the auditory thinking. So, see out, see in, hear out, hear in, feel out sensations of the body. And that includes taste and smell, every way that you can experience your body. And then feel in our emotions. So feel out's the body, and feel in our emotions. And this is the other thing that never dawned on me, but now cognitive, particularly neuroscience, is validating. And there's lots of theories about the relationship between emotions and thoughts. But it's clear that every emotion shows up in the body. I mean, how else could we know it? We tend to think, if somebody says I'm anxious, we tend to think it's a psychological problem, which it can be. But the only way we know we're anxious is because the body is feeling the emotion. It's true for every emotion. So when you get good at being able to detect, feel in emotions, you become more emotionally resilient. You become more emotionally intelligent. And in this culture, most of us are not trained to tune in to our emotions. Many people don't know what they're feeling as well. So, given my explanation, see out, see in, hear out, hear in, feel in, can you think of anything that I've missed that a human being will experience? People often come up with things, so what do you think?
I was just thinking, Dan Siegel says we have the sense of our interconnectedness as something we can feel.
So I know Dan Siegel at UCLA. Dan Siegel says there's a sense of interconnectedness that we can feel. Feel. How would we feel it? It isn't in the stars, right? It's either in our body or our minds, right? What else? Yes?
Well, there's also different states, like dream states and hypnotic states, or just like dream states, and other realms of experience that I'm not sure if they're in the body or not, but they do influence, but dreams have an effect.
Yeah, dream states.
Yeah, they let you feel in, feel out.
Yeah, how would you know? I usually, but somebody brings it up, I say, how do you know it?
Well,
if you experience
I know it.
Yeah, if you know it.
When I wake up for a second, then I forget it.
Yeah, it's a dream state. How do we know we're dreaming? Most of the time we don't know, but we wake up and then we remember we were dreaming.
And sometimes we know in our dream that we're dreaming.
That's right. Yeah, we know that we're dreaming, Yeah, I would maintain that there's no human experience that isn't included in see, hear, feel, in or out. Were you going to raise? No? Yes?
Where do you place intuition?
That's the one that always comes up. How do you define intuition, do you think?
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps? Yeah. Well, what's the term we use in English? We say, my gut's telling me, right? And we now know, through the microbiome, we now know that the gut is a second brain. And they now are beginning to think that it has a lot to do with emotional awareness. Yeah.
In Spanish, I'm a native Spanish speaker. In Spanish, it's a heart feeling, no corazonada.
Corazon.
Corazonada.
Corazon. Yeah. Which in Spanish it grounds intuition back into the body. Yeah. So let's go ahead and enough of my talking. Let's experience. Because again, what I would suggest, don't believe a thing I say. If you don't experience it, don't believe it. Have you ever had a teacher tell you that? But I'm serious. Don't believe a thing I say. You can experience everything I'm talking about. And if you don't, then you don't have to accept it. So I'm going to take you through first what's called a tour of the senses, so you can experience what I was just talking about. And then we're going to put it together in the technique called see, hear, feel everything. Okay? And I'll try not to torture you. Okay? So I'll have some short practices, and then I want to get feedback, see what you experienced. So let's do the tour of the senses. So to begin, see out, pick an object in the room that you find interesting, and just rest your attention there. And if you want, you can actually silently label it C, kind of rhythmic pace. see, see. And as you focus, it's the first skill, concentration. You're choosing what to pay attention to. Notice the details of what you're looking at. It's the second skill, clarity. And now there's sounds going on, feelings in the body. Just use your equanimity. Let that come and go, and keep focused on what you see. Okay, now we'll let that go, and we'll do see in. And if it's helpful and you're comfortable, you can close your eyes or leave them open. Now picture your favorite food, okay? The image of your favorite food, and notice where it's showing up in your head. There's actually a place called the enrich space. It could be in front of your eyes or some side of the head. And this is see in. We're thinking visually. Okay, we can let that go. Let's do here. Bring your attention to the sounds in the environment and notice how many sounds you can hear. And notice how the sounds are changing. So that's hear out. And now let's do hear in. Silently recite to yourself your phone number. And hear yourself saying your phone number. Auditory thinking. Okay, we're going to let that go. And let's do feel out. Bring your awareness into your body and notice any physical sensations. It could be feeling in your feet, your body in the chair, and just bring attention to feel out. Okay, we can let that go. And let's do the last one, feel in. Notice if there is any obvious emotion in your body. It could be anxiety, happiness, boredom. And if there's nothing there, and that's common, you might try putting a smile on your face, even a silly smile, and notice if it lights up your emotional experience. And you can feel it. Okay, so let's stop at this point. What was your experience with all this?
Similar to focusing on my breath.
In what way?
Wasn't thinking about much else than what you're asking us to focus on.
Great. And what we would say is that is the first skill of concentration. You're focusing, you're choosing what to pay attention to, and we'll call that concentration. And that's essential for mindfulness. You've got to be able to choose what to pay attention to. So absolutely, if you use the breath as an object, you're choosing to pay attention to the breath. In this case, you broaden your experience to pay attention to everything you can experience. That's what I would maintain. The sights in the world, the sights in your head, the sounds in the world, the talk in your head, feeling of your body and the emotions in your body. Everything that you can have a sensory experience of, you did. And you chose to pay attention, as you're saying, and we'll call that concentration. As you get better at concentration, the second skill pops up, and that's called clarity. And, you know, I in the last year, I decided, as much as I love EDM, I need to experience classical music before I die. I've never been interested. So I got a subscription to the symphony, and when I go, I really choose to pay attention. And what's happened, like the symphony last Sunday, the Tchaikovsky piece, I wanted to jump out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. I was ready to EDM it. Because I was concentrated, and I heard the music for the first time in my life. I heard all the different pieces, all the different instruments. So clarity, the second skill, can light up your life. But you have to be able to pay attention.
And at the symphony, you're one of the younger ones.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, jump out of our walkers. Yeah. And so then the third skill is the equanimity, because I'm sure as I was directing you to pay attention to, let's say, see out or hear out, there were we would call them distractions, right? That maybe when you were looking at an object, your attention shifted to the sound of a car. So, you know, sometimes we say in mindfulness that there's a distraction. If you're focused on your breath and you hear a sound, that's a distraction. Well, in this form of practice, there's no distractions. There's no distractions. Because if you were looking at an object and then you became aware of the car sound, you can pay attention to that as long as you were focusing, using clarity, and the equanimity is allowing whatever to come and go without pushing on it, pushing it away, pulling on it. Okay? So that third skill, many people believe that equanimity is the most essential mindfulness skill. It allows us to not get caught up into what the Buddha taught us not to do, which is to cling or have aversion. It's to allow, in our experience, not in the world, but in our experience, whatever comes and goes. What else? What was your experience?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to word it. I'm not sure if I'm mixing things up. Say you're meditating all the time now, like when you go to the grocery store, right? You give that example.
Yeah.
So, and just meditation is being aware of the sound, being aware of the fruits that you're looking at, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that mindfulness then?
Yeah. Yeah.
But isn't I suppose that don't you practice meditation to become more mindful, or are the two terms more intertwined than have been separated?
Yeah.
Are they just more intertwined than?
No, that's a great question, because the term meditation can have different meanings. Meditation, because there's different kinds of meditation, and the way I think about it is just training your mind. So, you can do yoga as a meditation, it's training your mind, but it may not be mindfulness. Mindfulness is, one definition of mindfulness is that you know when you're seeing, you know when you're hearing, and you know when you're feeling, in and out. You're aware of of whatever you're experiencing. Most of the time, we're on autopilot, right? All kinds of stuff just happens, and once in a while, more often than not, we become aware. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, so, yeah, probably, so maybe that kind of meditation makes you more aware of being mindful, that, out in the world, that
Yes.
too, in everyday life.
Well, and what I'm going to suggest you, we're going to do one more practice. What I'm going to suggest for not homework, I don't like giving homework, but home practice, do what's called a micro hit. A micro hit is 10 minutes or less. It can be 30 seconds, it can be 10 seconds of just paying attention to see, hear, or feel. So when you go to the grocery store, if you remember, notice the color of the oranges for for 10 seconds. And if you come home and say, wow, I can't believe how beautiful those oranges were, people will say, what's wrong with you? What's the big deal about oranges? Well, you're opening up your awareness. So that's one thing I'm going to suggest. Let's do this final practice, and it's a little difficult to get used to, and we're going to really focus on doing it next week because it takes more practice. It's called See, Hear, Feel Everything. And what I'm going to suggest you do, instead of choosing a particular thing to focus on, allow your attention just to float, and wherever it lands, decide, is it see, hear, or feel? You can use the label if you want, and then let go and notice where your attention goes next, okay? And I'll demonstrate, and this is really me meditating, okay? Feel, hear, see, feel, hear, see. What I'm doing is whatever pops up, I take a few seconds to pay attention to it, maybe label it, that's helpful, and then let go and notice what pops up next. Okay, shall we try it? And I won't torture you too much. We'll do 3 minutes, okay? Because our guardian of the temple has to make announcements. Okay, so assuming a mindfulness posture, just alert, comfortable, eyes open or closed, whatever is best for you. Now allow your attention to move freely, and wherever it lands, is it see, hear, or feel, in or out. Pay attention for a few seconds, and then let go, and notice what comes next. And I'll be quiet, and let's do this for 2 minutes. Remember, there are no distractions. Whatever you experience, pay attention. And the attention may go back to the same thing over and over again, and that's okay. Just pay attention. Okay. So what I would suggest, please come back next week. We're going to spend more time grounding in this practice. And you might ask yourself, you know, in those 2 minutes, were you more aware of things going on? And it could be as simple as you have thoughts, auditory or visual. That's okay, that's good. But were you more aware? And I think you can see how grounding yourself in this open practice opens you up to life. And with equanimity, it does what the Buddha taught us, which is we don't have to cling. We can be open to what comes. And therefore, we don't suffer as much, or not at all as well. So, maybe for home practice, you might, if you have a daily meditation practice, do a little bit of see, hear, feel. See what happens, if you want. And otherwise, when you remember, do what we call a micro hit. It could be anything. When I get stopped at a stoplight and I'm aware of my impatience, I ground myself in see out on the red light, and I really focus my concentration. The impatience goes away. But I'm also meditating, and I'm strengthening my skills as well. So, please come back, and thank you so much for your good attention, concentration tonight, and I hope this was helpful. And Erica, our guardian of the temple, has some announcements.
Hello everyone, my name is Erica and I'm hosting tonight. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction problems, and our food redistribution program meets every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything that we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book that you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would also be very helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.